Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Roadrunner Training Projects. We are outside, as you can see. It is super nice out in, I guess it's April now, April 1st. So, super nice. It's like 70 degrees out right now. I'm actually wearing these nice pants with these awesome flip-flops. And as you can see, I'm holding my microphone because I have no table to set it on. So, yeah, we're just going to have to make this work. If you are watching this video, this is going to be the most entertaining part of the video, unless you're really into training. So I advise you probably to skip this video if you're not super into the science of training and all that. Oh, and here's Malice. If you might be able to see him on the screen. But yeah, if you're not super into training, then I advise that you kind of skip over this video. Maybe go watch one of my more action-packed videos, or tune in on Saturday where I'll post something that's a little bit more entertaining as opposed to this video, which is going to be basically just purely science-based and everything like that. So let's actually get to it and talk about critical velocity and the benefits and how you would actually use critical velocity yourself or for the athletes you coach. So I'll catch you guys after the video. So looking at the science of critical velocity, we're typically looking at trying to hit 93% of VO2 max. VO2 max being the volume of oxygen that we can uptake and utilize within the body. To work anaerobic threshold, we have to be above 87% of VO2 max. To increase our VO2 max, we have to be able to do workouts at 90% to 100% of VO2 max. So why not just work at 100% of VO2 max all the time? Well, essentially this will sacrifice the amount of time that we can spend at anaerobic threshold. We want to typically spend a good amount of time with short rest at anaerobic threshold to gain benefits from anaerobic threshold work. Anaerobic threshold work will actually work on buffering lactic acid. So to do this, we have to be able to accumulate enough lactic acid. Now, if you're like me and you actually use race pace, as of recently, I've kind of switched from VO2 max to using more race pace kind of paces to determine my paces instead of like a VO2 max calculator that you can find on like Tin Man's website or Jack Daniels as well. So we're typically looking at hitting anywhere from 10K to 15K race pace when we're trying to hit critical velocity. So this is very easy if you run obviously a lot of 10Ks, you can just use that 10K pace. It's a little more rare that you run a 15K race, but the 10K will be substantial enough and you can kind of just back off just a little bit off the paces if you don't want to hit quite to 10K and you want to hit more close to that 15K race pace. There's only a slight difference in pacing. So how can we apply critical velocity to our workouts? Well, it starts off with stress. If we're periodizing right, we need to be able to increase stress. That is one of the basic rules of periodization. You have to always be increasing the stress in some way. So we need to increase small amounts of stress and increase them gradually. To increase stress, we can do typically 3 different things. There are some other ways to increase stress, for example, like adding hills into a workout or something like that, or adding resistance. But for critical velocity, I believe there are more just 3 different methods to do it. We can, first of all, decrease the amount of rest in between each rep. We can increase the length of each rep. And then the last one being that we can increase the pace of each rep. So I don't typically like to increase the pace until later in the season when you start to see improvements in your 10K time. Until then, I believe that we should not be increasing that rep pace because we're not even hitting 10K to 15K. If you drop below 10K pace, then you're hitting closer to a VO2 max instead of a critical velocity workout. This can cause us to die too early in the workout, and then like the last couple of reps may be slower than that first half or even the reps just before that one. We don't want to see that. We want to see a gradual increase in the pace as we go on, if anything. If we train our bodies to die in a workout, we typically train them to die in a race. All right, I typically have 3 general rules I follow when I am writing critical velocity workouts. My first rule being you don't typically want to go over 5 miles for critical velocity workouts. I've tried doing critical velocity workouts that were 6 miles long and they did not work out well. And then actually ended up dying at the end of the workout. If you die at the end of a workout, you die at the end of a race. This also is important because if you run 6 miles at critical velocity pace, essentially you're running a 10K. I mean, if you do this, then you need to be able to give yourself the same amount of rest that you would probably use for after a 10K race. which would mean that you could probably only get one workout in that week and not be able to do too much more stress that week. I don't see the purpose in doing this. I feel like just sticking to the 5 miles is good enough. You get a good enough benefit out of the workout. My second rule is don't rest for less than 1 minute per K. So if you go up or down, you can adjust that as you please. Typically, since there's not too much of a difference in like range for what you can do a CV workout in, which is my third rule, I'll talk about a little bit more after this. You can typically stick to about that proportion and not have to adjust it exponentially or anything like that. So yeah, 1 minute per K. If you go below 1 minute, I found that you're digging a little too deep. You're not getting enough rest for that effort as well. This is not an anaerobic threshold workout purely, so not something that you are below 90% VO2 max and kind of in between that 87 to 90%. I would even say 87 to 89% of VO2 max. This is something where you're at 93%, so you can't be taking 1 minute per mile like you would in an anaerobic threshold. You are working that VO2 max system as well. And my third rule, as I alluded to earlier in my second rule, is 1K repeats are kind of that sweet spot for critical velocity. But you can go up to 2K for the repeats as well. If you're doing a longer race, I actually recommend probably going up to 2K repeats. So like, for example, if you're doing a half marathon, I can see 2K reps being beneficial. But you got to work your way up to that, and you can increase that stress as you go. I typically look at 1K repeats being the sweet spot because typically with VO2 max, we want to be anywhere between 2 minutes to 3 minutes to work our VO2 max. So for critical velocity, we do have a little bit less rest, which is nice as well. So we can work that VO2 max if we are maybe doing 800 meter repeats. But that 1K repeats are typically for most people going to be closer to 3 minutes or so. So you can really work that VO2 max within that range. So the 3 minutes is more of that sweet spot for that VO2 max kind of workout. Some other things I typically keep in mind when riding critical velocity workouts. I want to kind of go over my structure first, actually, and kind of go of what I kind of generally do to increase the stress of my critical velocity workouts. So typically I'll start with 800 meter repeats if I haven't done critical velocity in a while, or I'm kind of lacking in it. I will start with 800 meter repeats followed by a minute 30 rest. So this is quite a bit of rest for 800 meter repeats, but again, this is more of an introductory workout. I will maybe work up to 5 miles, as I said in my first rule, or actually start at 5 miles since this isn't putting too much stress on the body. And as long as you have a good base, I feel like you can handle this. And then I will kind of increase the length of the reps first. So I'll go from 800 maybe up to like 900 or even a K right away. And then keep the rest at a minute 30. And then maybe after that, I'll go to like 1200 meter repeats. And then if I'm happy at 1200 meter repeats, and I think that's long enough, I will start to decrease rest next. So I'll kind of go from 130 down to 115, down to a minute rest. Again, if you're doing a K, the minute rest. If you're doing a 1200, you're probably only going down to about a minute 15 or so. This is one of my favorite workouts to do when I'm training for a sea level half marathon at altitude. So typically I train most of my athletes at 5,000 feet. Denver, Colorado area. So typically this will be this pace, this 10K/15K pace is actually half marathon pace at sea level. This is one of my favorite workouts when I am training for a sea level half marathon. And by that, I mean when I'm training at altitude for a sea level half marathon. Typically, I train myself and most of my athletes at about 5,000 feet of elevation. 5,000, 6,000, the Denver metro area, essentially. This 10K to 15K race pace at altitude is typically equivalent to my half marathon pace at sea level. So a great way to work running economy, but also to work anaerobic threshold and VO2 max. As I come closer to my race though, I will actually kind of increase that rest again because I don't want to be digging so deep into the VO2 max and anaerobic threshold systems anymore. It's more of a maintenance purpose. You can either increase the rest or you can decrease the volume of the work out in total. So instead of doing 5 miles, typically either do 3/4 of that or even half that amount. My favorite place to do critical velocity workouts is on the track. You can see you have all those markers and you kind of know where the 100, 200, 300 meter marks, 400 meter marks are. So you can kind of tell where you need to start and go and how much longer you have. You can keep an eye on the pace if you need to, but you can do, and I have done critical velocity workouts in other places too, like around a little lake that's about a K around, or like I had this place that when I was training in Brighton, Colorado, I actually had this 800 meter dirt track. It was almost exactly 800 meters. So I'd use that dirt track. And then halfway, there was like a pathway. So you would know how, where the 200 meter marks are and where the 400 meter marks are mainly with that pathway. And then I kind of had just an idea. You kind of develop this sense if you train in the same place where like that 200 meter or the 100 meter marks are as well. So, I mean, if you wanted to stay more on that dirt, you can do that with a critical velocity workout. Critical velocity workouts are very mentally tough. Typically in that last half of the workout, if you're doing them right, you will actually feel the accumulation of the short rest with the intensity of the effort that you're putting forward start to accumulate in your legs and lungs, and you're breathing heavy at this point. So if you're doing, like, for example, 7K, I'll feel it around that. If you're like 1K repeats, I'm typically feeling it around 4K in. 3K is not too bad, but once you get to 4K, it starts to get pretty difficult. And then up to 6K is very difficult as well. The seventh one, you typically have that motivation, like, I'm almost done, I can just finish this last rep up, and it actually isn't as bad as the sixth or the fifth one. But the sixth and fifth are some of the hardest reps in a critical velocity workout if you're doing 7 or 8K. The only workout that I find a little bit more difficult than critical velocity is actually a lactic tolerance workout. Essentially, that is building up as much lactic acid as possible and then dealing with it and training your body to deal with lactic acid buildup. Short rest at a very intense pace. Obviously sounds bad with like just accumulating lactic acid and trying to dealing with it. Like, that's obviously going to be a painful workout. So maybe I will do a video a little bit later on a lactic tolerance workout as well. But for now, that sums up the science of critical velocity workouts. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed that video, and if you have any questions, feel free to post in the comments below. Make sure you also like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more informational videos, maybe some of those action videos, and also vlog or kind of talk about my week of my athlete's week and the training and all that on Sundays. So yeah, catch you guys later.